There's a strong case to be made that the defining genre of American television used to be the talk show. In the history of TV in this country, I don't think any type of programming had such an impact. It may seem hard to believe for younger viewers, but there truly was a time period where everywhere you looked, some new talk show was popping up on some channel you didn't expect, with some host you had never heard of. And what made the talk show such a core part of American television was that while they all had their own themes and gimmicks, at their core, they were all about the interactions between a host and their guests. And when it went right, we got some of the most magical moments in TV history. But when it went wrong, that's when we got the real good stuff. There have been so many infamous talk show moments where it went completely off the rails that I'm disappointed as I write this, knowing I won't be able to show clips of them all. Clips of difficult guests, tense exchanges, and occasionally some straight up violence. And when it comes to infamous talk show moments, one of those violent exchanges takes the cake. This is the story of a pro wrestler who injured a comedian on national television. But unlike these two, the comedian was not in on it. This is Pop Culture Hyperfixations, and today we're taking a look at the time Hulk Hogan choked out Richard Belzer on live TV.
Because he's all right. He's just sleeping. He's sleeping. Really, I was a sleeper hole. He'll be all right.
Today's video is sponsored by KristenSt.Cat.com. Full transparency, I may be a little biased because this is my girlfriend's small business, but as far as I'm concerned, it's the premier destination for dumb stuff made by a shoddy internet artist. And don't get mad at me, that's her quote, not mine. She's got stickers, pens, keychains, and more, and enter the promo code PCH at checkout for 15% off your next purchase. Remember, shop small and shop stupid at KristenSt.Cat.com. Now, back to the video. Our story begins in 1985 with a stand-up comedian on the come-up named Richard Belzer. Long before he played Detective John Munch on Law & Order SVU and Homicide: Life on the Street and Arrested Development and The Wire and The X-Files and whatever the beat was, the 40-year-old Belzer was a working comedian who had seen his star rise throughout the 70s and 80s. His incredible intelligence and acerbic wit served him well during his appearances in films, television, and talk shows, including a recurring spot as a contributor on Alan Thicke's disastrous foray into the genre, Thick of the Night, which was such a bomb that it probably deserves its own episode. In 1984, he began to transition from contributor to host, first with the Richard Belzer Show on Cinemax, which seemingly no footage of exists anymore, and then in 1985 when he was given the job as the host of a new talk show on the Lifetime channel, Hot Properties. Lifetime was a relatively new cable channel at the time, and while the network did still cater to women back then, it wasn't anything like it would eventually become. They had a strong focus on talk shows, and while the show was originally conceived of with Tova Feldshuh and Fred Newman as hosts, Belzer made an appearance on the show that went so well, the executives just gave him the job instead. He took it because he thought the live nature of it, especially the ability to take phone calls, would be really fun. As he told the Connecticut Post, "When you're talking with the public, non-professionals, it's more exciting and volatile and unpredictable. I like that."
Ha ha! Foreshadowing.
He was only on the job for a few weeks when he was told his guest for that night's show on March 27, 1985 would be the actor Mr.T and pro wrestler Hulk Hogan, who were there to promote an event coming up that weekend called Wrestlemania. Alright, let me just say this up front. One of the difficulties in doing a video concerning the World Wrestling Federation, and yes, I still like calling it that, is that aside from trying to avoid using footage they own, which by the way is why this video might sometimes feature random stuff like this, is that it gets hard to separate the truth from the legend. The McMahon family, who controlled the WWF, also controlled a lot of the narratives, which means it takes a lot of work to sift through all the bullshit. Personally, I think a good rule of thumb is that if a McMahon is talking, they are probably lying. Unless they say then they're telling the truth. I say all that because there's a lot of myth making when it comes to Wrestlemania, so this is my way of saying that I'm telling the truth as best as I can ascertain it. After purchasing the WWF from his father in 1982, Vince McMahon set about on his mission to conquer the wrestling world. To do so, he used a variety of tactics, some more underhanded than others, but the one that proved to be the most successful was his embracing of cable television. That allowed the company to expand from a Northeast promotion into a national one. And a partnership with the musician Cyndi Lauper, as well as exposure on a nascent channel called MTV, was instrumental in making the company seem cool. At the centerpiece of his new empire was the world champion Hulk Hogan, who had won the title in January of 1984 and quickly became the cornerstone of what was commonly referred to as the Rock and Wrestling Connection. As the popularity of Hogan and the WWF grew, so did Vince's vision, which is why he decided in 1985 that the company would make a big leap with their first nationally broadcast supercard, Wrestlemania. It was truly a visionary idea that had already been done by another wrestling company, Jim Crockett Promotions, who had presented their show, Starrcade, twice. But to his credit, Vince was not only a hell of a salesman, but he also had the benefit of promoting his shows in the biggest media market in the country. So he and his wife Linda leveraged basically everything they had into promoting Wrestlemania, which would take place at Madison Square Garden and be broadcast not just on pay-per-view, but also at hundreds of closed-circuit locations across the country. It was a huge risk, and given Vince's track record, it wasn't a slam dunk it was gonna work. The last time he had tried to go all in on something of that magnitude was back in 1974 when he promoted Evel Knievel's Snake River Canyon jump, which ended up an epic failure that cost him a ton of money. Early WrestleMania ticket sales weren't promising, with some of those closed-circuit locations canceling their showings due to a lack of interest. But the WWF pushed the show strongly wherever they could, and especially the unique tag team main event of the villainous Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff and his partner Roddy Piper taking on the world champ Hulk Hogan and a man who never met a fool he did not pity, Mr.T.
Mother, there is no other like mother, so treat her right.
In 1985, Mr.T was at the peak of his popularity. Not only was he the star of the A-Team, which was a massive show, but he was still riding the success of his performance as the monstrous Clubber Lang in Rocky III, which coincidentally also starred Hulk Hogan as Thunderlips. Baby! It's worth noting that unlike now, celebrities in wrestling were fairly uncommon back then, especially ones who weren't former professional athletes. But Mr. T's reputation as a tough guy, combined with his legitimate background as an actual tough guy, did give him credibility. In the lead up to WrestleMania, Mr. T and Hulk Hogan went on a media blitz promoting the show every chance they got, which is why they traveled down to the Lifetime Studios on March 27th, 1985. That, and because they were told a bunch of sick kids wanted to see them. At least that's what they claimed later on, because Richard Belzer said that Mr. T demanded there be sick kids or he wouldn't come. That's the issue with this story. Everyone's version of events is different. So, in the interest of fairness, first, we're going to go through what viewers at home saw before we let everyone share their perspective. On the episode of Hot Properties, for reasons that seem unclear, Mr. T came out first for a solo interview with Belzer that went off the rails almost immediately. The two of them not only had no chemistry, but also had no respect for each other. Belzer was being a bit of a prick, but Mr. T would not play along and divert from the Mr. T persona, so it was just incredibly awkward and with a lot of tense exchanges like this one.
I wanted to ask you, A-Team is a very violent show. Does that play against your image?
Violent? Who said it's violent?
Well, I haven't. No, I said it was. No, I've seen the show, and I see, you know, the guy with the cigar and you and beating people up and shooting off guns. And now, isn't that antithetical to your image, all that violence?
Well, you use a big word. See, Mr. T.
Antithetical means opposite. Forgive me.
Right. I'm a street brother. That's why the kids.
Well, I'm from the street too.
That's why the kids.
I learned that word myself.
The kids relate to me because I'm not a phony.
I'm not
a lot of guys gonna try to use big words and whatnot. I use this and that, whatnot, in plain, simple English.
Okay. It's 12 excruciating minutes, including some phone calls, before Hulk Hogan finally comes out. He's far more playful with Belzer than T, and while I do think Belzer was being a little bit of an asshole, it wasn't anything egregious. T had basically shut down at that point, so Belzer, who was kinda clearly just trying to keep the show moving, suggests that Hulk show him some moves. As his band played the funeral march, Belzer walked over to the floor while Hogan whispered to T, just loud enough for the mics to hear, "I'm gonna make him squeal." After Belzer did a pratfall on the floor and Hogan warned him to be careful because he might hurt himself, the Hulkster put the comedian in a front face lock and began to squeeze. Just letting you know, if you're a bit squeamish, I'd skip the next part because it's kinda gnarly, and for the rest of you, I think it's better to let the clip speak for itself.
Because he's all right. He's just sleeping. He's sleeping. Really, I was a sleeper hole. He'll be all right. He's waking up now. That was a serious move. A lot of people.
See, it works. All right, brother.
And now, we'll be right back after this word from you-know-who.
When the broadcast resumed, Belzer was not there, but rather a producer for the show named John Gilroy, who resumed the interview with Hogan and T. Hogan was clearly shook and gave some version of an apology for what happened, while also putting a little bit of the blame on Belzer for asking for the demonstration, while Mr. T was so defiant that it borders on comical.
This man is a champion of the world in wrestling. I don't know if you've seen the piece a while back on 2020. A reporter asked one of the wrestlers was wrestling fake or for real. So the wrestler slapped the interviewer twice upside the head. The guy wanted to know, was it fake or for real? I think he found out it was for real. Like I was saying earlier, I said, this is not a joke.
Eventually, Gilroy threw to a commercial break, and unfortunately that's where the available footage we have ends. But our story is just beginning. Lucky for us, all three of the men involved have written books, so let's go ahead and start breaking it down, Rashomon style.
It's not hot.
According to Hogan, the appearance was incredibly last minute, and he had to be personally convinced by Linda McMahon to go. He said that Mr. T was in a foul mood the whole time, and in his book, it's clear there was something about T that bugged him, but you know, I just can't figure out what it might be. He said that they were lied to about having kids in wheelchairs there, and that he was incredibly tired. But in hindsight, he should have been more playful with Belzer's questions. He said that backstage, Belzer asked him if wrestling was fake, but Hogan said it'd be a lot more fun if you asked me on camera. Now, Hogan didn't say this part, but I need to interject to briefly explain that back in the 80s, it was drilled into the wrestlers to, quote, protect the business. Your job was to never reveal that pro wrestling wasn't a real sport, and some people took it further than others. The most notable incident had taken place pretty recently in December of 1984, when Dr. D. David Schultz famously slapped 2020's John Stossel for saying wrestling was fake. And I know it's wrong to hit people, but I can't help but find it a little funny when that smug libertarian weirdo gets hit. And I find it even funnier when I put goofy sound effects under it. A common tactic used by wrestlers like Cowboy Bill Watts was to put the guy in a front face lock and choke him out, but quickly revive him so the person knows it's real, but nobody gets actually hurt. Well, Hogan clearly had that idea in mind, but by his own admission, he panicked and choked him too hard and didn't mean to let Belzer hit the floor. He was terrified that he had killed him and was so relieved when Belzer came to. This is me speaking, but I think Hogan legitimately did not try to injure Belzer, and his body language afterwards makes me think he was actually sincere. The problem is, it's Hulk Hogan, who had an incredibly casual relationship with the truth. Even in describing the incident in his book, he made up stuff, including that Belzer kept taunting Mr. T by saying, "I pity the fool," over and over again. But that's just classic Hogan, who had so many lies that I decided to prepare a small list. According to Belzer, he didn't really care about Mr. T and Hulk Hogan, but did care about ratings, which is why he welcomed them onto the show. Backstage, Hogan was very nice and cordial, but not Mr. T, who was in an incredibly bad mood. T continued to frustrate him when the cameras were rolling, and during a commercial break, Belzer finally urged him to lighten up, but said Mr. T kept saying he was playing his character. When Hogan came out, Belzer saw an opportunity to take control of the show and suggested the demonstration of holds. When Hogan first put on the face lock, he thought he was messing around, until he suddenly realized he was being choked, and the next thing he knew, he was out. He does not know how he managed to get up and throw the break, other than to say he had show business in his blood, and now coming out of his fucking head. Much like Hogan, Belzer's version of the story contains stuff that didn't happen and exaggerations. But he gets a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt because he's a comedian telling a story as opposed to someone with enough documented lies that I did a round two.
I'm gonna torture him. I'm gonna crucify him real bad.
In his autobiography, Mr. T, the Man with the Gold, he wrote, My mother was robbed on Tuesday, and I found the guys who did it a week later on a Thursday. I would like to add that up until that point, I had never killed anyone before. I will not say what I did to those two, I'm not saying that, who robbed and threatened to kill my mother, but I will say this, no one will ever see them again, and I don't have no hurt in my heart anymore.
What the hell is that?
Yeah, so it turns out that Mr. T hasn't really talked about the incident that much, as he was apparently too busy confessing to murder. One of the only times I could find him talking about it was the night after it happened. It was during an appearance on Late Show with David Letterman, where he basically told Dave that if he didn't play his cards right, he'd end up hurt like another talk show host. Yeah, even after the incident, the Wrestlemania media blitz was in full effect. And it seems like it might have been a textbook case of there's no such thing as bad publicity. Because of the incident, awareness of WrestleMania was growing, but its crescendo would peak the night before the event, when Saturday Night Live producer Dick Ebersol brought T and Hogan on to host the show. Comedian Steven Landsberg was the original host, but had to bow out at the last minute, so T and Hogan were given the gig of hosting a show that aired just a mere 12 hours before WrestleMania. Their appearance is most notably remembered for their part in the most famous of the Fernando's Hideaway segments, but it's also worth pointing out that their monologue indirectly referenced the Belzer incident, complete with Mr. T choking out an audience member. The following afternoon's WrestleMania was a big success for the WWF, and while we'll never know for sure, there were enough last-minute ticket sales to suggest that the SNL appearance was definitely a factor. Hogan and Mr. T would prevail in the main event that night, but unbeknownst to them, another battle was on the horizon. Belzer's first appearance on Hot Properties following the incident came the day after WrestleMania, where he delivered a monologue explaining to everyone that not only was the choking incident not scripted, but that he needed 8 stitches to close his wounds. A lawsuit quickly followed that saw Belzer sue Hogan, Mr. T, and the WWF to the tune of $5 million. The WWF lawyers called it a publicity stunt, but Belzer thought he had a slam dunk case. I mean, the whole thing was on camera, it should be an easy resolution. Unfortunately, the case dragged on for years, and it wasn't until January of 1990 that jury selection was finally scheduled to begin. But a settlement was reached at literally the last minute. Belzer wasn't allowed to reveal just how much he got in the lawsuit, but the numbers that have been floated out there suggest he walked away with around $310,000, which was enough for him to purchase a home in France he would refer to throughout the years as the Hogan Arms and Chez Hogan. According to Hulk, him, Vince, and Mr. T would split the settlement, although Mr. T told Howard Stern that he never paid a cent, leading to Belzer to tell Stern later on that T was a fucking liar. While the men got on with their lives and careers, the incident still followed them, especially Belzer and Hogan. Both men would be asked about it throughout the rest of their lives, and while Hogan would usually try to dodge talking about it, Belzer was never shy of talking shit about the Hulkster and claimed that at no point did he ever receive an apology. The two men never crossed paths again, but there is a theory revolving the two worth noting that concerns Hogan's feature film opus, No Holds Barred. In the film, Hogan's character Rip ends up in a massive brawl and corners a lowly limo driver who is so afraid of Hogan, he poops his pants. A lot of people believe that limo driver is purposely styled to look like Belzer, but unfortunately, it can't be proven. But what can be proven is even weirder, which is that there was a brief moment in 1991 where it looked like the pair might end up as co-stars. Belzer was offered a supporting role in a movie being developed called Suburban Commando, but the only problem was Hulk Hogan was set to star. Unsurprisingly, Belzer declined, but when asked by reporters why he turned the movie down, he told them it wasn't Hogan's involvement as much as the fact the movie sounded bad, saying, quote, "The reason I turned down the part had nothing to do with the fact he tried to kill me." Hogan and Belzer have both passed on, but lucky for us, as of this recording, Mr. T is still alive. Although the men who robbed his mother apparently are not. Hulk Hogan passed away in 2025, outliving Belzer by a couple years. But it was the comedian who got the last laugh. When he died in February of 2023 at 78 years old, not only was he surrounded by his loved ones, but he was inside that chateau in France he had purchased way back in 1990 with his settlement money, Chez Hogan. Screw it, play some more Hogan lies. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more, hit subscribe. And let me know in the comments below whose side you take in the Richard Belzer Hulk Hogan feud. Oh, and if you're so inclined to, I do have YouTube memberships open, as well as a Patreon if you feel like financially supporting these weird deep dives. And shout out to those who have already done so. Thanks again for watching.